They finally did it! They finally arrived! The Redcat Racing factory upgrades for the Redcat RDS. I have the front knuckles, I have the lower front control arms, the transmission, and the spur gear adapter. In this specific video, we're going to be putting the transmission together with the spur gear adapter and putting it in the Redcat RDS. We're going to get the body off, we're going to start tearing it apart, getting that transmission out of there so that we can swap it over. As we get started, I have to note that for my car specifically as it is, I've actually swapped the transmission around, reversed it to make it a rear motor. This whole process will be basically the same for you, except yours will just be the other direction around. So the first thing we got to do, 1, 2, 3, 4 screws here, and that will get the shock tower off of the transmission, the old transmission itself. And with that loose, we're then going to flip the car over and we're going to take out these 4 center screws here, and that should let the whole thing then come out. The whole transmission will now come loose from the car, but your motor is still actually attached, so motor wires are still attached. I am probably going to go ahead and actually just start disassembling here, because if we can then take the plate off and the whole motor and everything can sit to the side. So the next step is these 4 screws that hold the spur gear onto the spur gear hole. Gear will then slide off. We can set it to the side. And then we're going to be looking at this set screw right over here that gets this current spur gear adapter off. And that is a 1.5 millimeter. With that out of the way, you can now take the 3 screws off that hold the whole motor plate and motor to the transmission. That's now off and the transmission is fully free. Before we take it apart any further, I'm going to go ahead and weigh it to see what the difference is, because I'm betting with this new transmission, it might be much lighter. Now, a couple things to note. I've actually removed some material on this transmission already, so yours will be slightly heavier from that standpoint, and I've already swapped it over to titanium screws. So yours might be heavier in that regards as well, but no motor, no nothing else hanging on to this. As it sits, that is 100 grams. Well, that's easy. 100 grams on the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think total screws. We're going to blow this whole thing apart to get the gears out of the inside of it. All this plastic is then going to go away. You're going to want to get all these gears, all the bearings, everything that you see, you're going to want to get it out. Now, this is a great opportunity for you to do some diff maintenance while you're here, to maybe replace those bearings, depending on how long you've had the car. Maybe at least at minimum, clean, re-grease those bearings. Could be a really good opportunity to do it while it's all apart. I actually bought myself some ProTech RC, some bearings. These are ceramic metal shielded bearings that I'm going to be putting into some of this build. When you look at these parts, you'll see that there's a kind of a smooth flat side where all the bearings are going to run, and then this tab that sticks out, that goes to the outside. So this is an outside to outside. The piece goes together like this. These embosses that stick out go to the inside to help hold those idler shafts that we have through there. With my new bearings installed, I have the whole shaft here, the input shaft, these 2 idler gears here, all now installed. New bearings, everything's greased up, looks great on this side. Now on this other side, this ends up being the left side of the transmission case. We're then going to bolt this piece on here. That's going to help hold that idler shaft and where everything else comes out that side. They provide their own hardware set for this. A whole bunch of little screws in here. I think we're going to be using these button head screws. This is also an opportunity where I've already changed a lot of this car over to titanium screws to save some weight. So if you don't want to use these, it's a good opportunity to get some and be swapping them out as you do this. Since you are putting metal screws into metal, you do want to make sure that you're using thread locker on all this process. And here is this part. So 1 screw up here, 2 screws down there. So I realized a place here where I screwed up. So I had put this here with the bearing already on it. Then the whole thought was that I put this through, but that's not gonna touch anything there. That doesn't work. So you have to actually put the bearing inside this little housing, and you have to get it in there and get it straight before you put it on this other side. You can actually use this as a guide, smash it in there, and see the bearing goes all the way to the end. Then you put this on here. I missed that the first time, so I get to do it over again. So check that out. That shaft now slides all the way in there to hold that together, and then these two parts slide together. Everything lines up. Everything's beautiful. So that's what you got to do. That bearing's got to be all the way in there first. In order to now help hold all this together, there's these two little standoffs. One goes back here on the back. One goes down here in the front. With that bolted together, we then have these shock tower braces. So these, I guess, help hold the shock tower on when we go to bolt that back on. So they go like that, where they kind of curve in. And I believe we're going to be screwing them in from the back side here. Before we reinstall the diff itself, the kit actually comes with these little shims, and they are some small itty bitty little shims. And it says that if you're using the factory diff, which I am still, that you need to put 3 of these shims on per side underneath the bearing. So that's what we'll be doing here. And then again, friendly reminder, this is a good opportunity to clean or replace your bearings. All right, we are all assembled. Diff is together. Check that out. Not only does it look really, really good, nice and smooth operation, all those new bearings in there and everything, it's looking good. So let's weigh this thing and see how much different it is than that 100-gram baseline we had. All right, here it is. We'll set it down. Baseline was 100. It's also 100. So we took all that material off. We took all that plastic out. It looks crazy, crazy fancy. 100? It's basically the same weight as the stock one was. So if it's not any lighter weight, then what does this transmission do for us besides looking really fancy? The other thing that I noticed that actually would have benefited me specifically, but not too many people that I know of, is it looks like this top idler gear is actually reversible. So where we put this sticky outy bit on here with 3 screws, it looks like that would have gone over here on this side as well, so you could have mirrored it. So that means that when I had reversed my transmission, and I needed to reverse the direction of my motor, I wouldn't have had to reverse the direction of my motor. I could have bolted everything else on over here instead. So that's definitely a benefit that it gives you. Another benefit is absolutely ridiculous easy access to the rear diff. I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that. Downside clearly is dirt and debris and wear on the gears. So as long as you're drifting, normally drift tracks are pretty clean. Even carpet drift tracks, concrete, polished concrete, P-tile, all that, usually pretty dang clean, to where you're not creating a lot of dust or anything. But if you're driving outside, rocks and bigger dust and that kind of stuff, this might be negative. My actual drift track that we're at right now does create a decent amount of dust, so this is going to be something where I'm going to want to blow these gears and keep them clean. I think the other thing that they did in here is they talked about the shimming of the rear diff here in order to make it potentially this is more accepting of aftermarket gearboxes, aftermarket diffs. There's a lot from the CLSD Rhino Racing makes to some Yokomo diffs and all that people like to run. There's a chance that this was designed to have a little bit more flexibility that way. While we're here doing this, we're also going to be putting on the brand new Spur gear adapter that Redcat put out. It has 2 different bolt patterns on there so that you can use the Redcat gears, but you can also use some of the more popular aftermarket gear sets for RC drifting. And it, nice lightweight, looks fancy, all that kind of stuff too. So just a couple extra dollars while you're here to get this part. So I'm going to be slapping that on there. Now I need to finish bolting this whole thing back through here. I'm going to zoom through doing that, only stopping to call out anything unique or noteworthy that you need to know. Quick tip along the way, I actually had to reset my gear mesh. It was just ever so slightly off. So just make sure you double check that as you're putting it back together. Now the other thing I noticed now that it's all installed is that it also provides a much lower clearance here. There was a lot of plastic on the factory diff that stuck up really high. This does not. This is all very, very low. Helpful if you're in a situation like me with my truck body where every little bit of clearance really helps. The other thing I'm noticing is now I'm going to have to be really really careful about all my wires that are around here. I have this capacitor off the ESC that is just literally millimeters away from that gear. That's probably a bad thing. I probably need to move it over here to the other side if I can. Other wires for the motor, all this stuff. We're going to have to be very purposeful with tying these things up. That is this new transmission all installed. In the next video, I'm going to be working on these lower control arms and the front knuckles that they now released as new upgrades for this car. If you're interested in catching that video, there's a Redcat RDS playlist. It's going to be popping up over here to your right. Go check it out and hit that subscribe button down below, and we will see you in one of those videos. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.